What if I told you that your data could be stolen even when nothing strange seems to be happening on your computer? Well, this is part of the world of cyber attacks. And in this video, we're going to explore a very important topic in cybersecurity: passive attacks versus active attacks. A passive attack is when an attacker only listens or observes that communication without changing anything in the system. The attacker does not modify data, does not block traffic, and does not directly damage the system. Now, the main goals of passive attacks are: number one, to steal confidential information such as passwords, credit card numbers, personal data, or business secrets. Number two, it's to monitor behavior. For example, who is talking to whom, how often are they communicating, and at what times are they sending data. And number three, to prepare future active attacks by collecting information and understanding the system first, and then attacking later with more precision. First, we have the eavesdropping or sniffing traffic. In this type of attack, the attacker captures data that is traveling through a network, for example, through Wi Fi or a wired connection. With the right tools, they can see which websites are being visited, what information is being sent, and sometimes even usernames and passwords, especially if the communication is not encrypted. Number two is traffic analysis. Sometimes the attacker cannot read the content because it is encrypted, but they can still analyze patterns in the traffic. For example, they look at who is communicated with whom, how often are they sending data, at what times, and for how long. And from these patterns, they can guess important things. For example, let's say they can guess that this person is sending data every night to this specific server. Maybe the server is used for backups or something very important. Number three, it's shoulder surfing. This is a very simple but effective passive attack. The attacker just looks over your shoulder to see what you're typing or reading on your screen. They might see your PIN at an ATM, your phone unlock code, your email password, or other private information. Last but not least, we have the wireless network spying. In public or insecure Wi Fi networks, attackers can capture unprotected traffic. If the network is not properly secured, they can see a lot of what the users are doing online. So, why are passive attacks dangerous? Well, it turns out that they're very hard to detect because nothing in the system seems to be broken or wrong. Also, the system continues to work normally, so there are no obvious signs that there's an attack happening. And finally, the victim usually has no idea that someone has been watching them or recording their data, sometimes for a very long time. So, in a summary, passive attacks are like invisible surveillance. The attacker is watching, always listening, and always learning about us.
Now I'm going to talk about active attacks. While passive attacks are about listening and spying, active attacks are about acting and interfering. An active attack is when the attacker interferes with the system. They modify, insert, or block data. The attacker is no longer just a silent observer, they are changing what is happening. Using the same example as before, you and your friend are talking in a room. This time someone enters the room and changes your message, answering your place, or makes loud noise so you cannot communicate properly. That is what happens in an active attack. The attacker is taking action, changing what is happening, and sometimes causing direct damage. Now, the main goals of an active attack are usually to modify data. For example, changing the amount of money in a bank transfer, changing rates in a system, or falsifying official records. Also, impersonate someone, for instance, by logging into a system using stolen credentials and acting as if they were a legitimate user. Interrupt a service like making a website or an online platform unavailable to real users, and spread malware such as viruses, worms, trojans, or ransomware to damage systems or take control of them. Now I will explain some of the most common types of active attacks. So the first one is man in the middle attack. In a man in the middle attack, the attacker secretly sits between two people or systems that are communicating. They can read messages, modify content, or inject new messages into the conversation. For example, the attacker can sit between your computer and a website. For you, it looks like you are talking to the website. For the website, it looks like it is talking directly to you. But in reality, everything passes through the attacker first. This allows the attacker to steal credentials, change information, or trick both sides. The second one is masquerade or impersonation. In this type of attack, the attacker pretends to be someone else. They may use stolen usernames and passwords, fake or stolen digital certificates, or vulnerabilities in the authentication process. An example would be an attacker logging into a company system as a manager and then approving fake payments, accessing confidential data, or changing important configurations. The next one is replay attacks. In a replay attack, the attacker captures a valid communication and then resends it later without authorization. For example, you make an online bank transfer. The attacker records the transaction message and later they send the same message again so that the bank transferred the money a second time. For the bank's point of view, the request looks legitimate because it is a copy of a real operation, but it is being used in a malicious way.
Next, we have message modification. Attacker alters part of a message while it is being transmitted. Examples include replacing a bank account number so money is sent to the attacker. Then we have DOS and DDoS attacks. A denial of service attack attempts to make a system or service unavailable. Attackers overload servers by sending an excessive number of requests and consuming all bandwidth, CPU, and memory. Finally, we have malware attacks. Malware includes viruses, worms, trojans, and ransomware. Once inside the system, malware can corrupt or delete data or even give attackers remote access to the device. Why active attacks are dangerous. Active attacks mostly target integrity because they alter data, availability because they interrupt or degrade services. Some of the consequences include direct financial loss, downtime affecting customers or operations, damage to reputation, and in some cases, legal problems if personal or sensitive data is changed or leaked. Differences between passive and active attacks. Passive attacks only listen or read data without interacting. Active attacks involve modification, interference, or injection of false information. Passive attacks mainly affect confidentiality, since the attacker tries to read data secretly. Active attacks mainly affect integrity and availability since they change data or disrupt systems. Passive attacks are very difficult to detect because nothing looks wrong. Meanwhile, active attacks are easier to notice due to interruptions, changes, or failures. Similarities between passive and active attacks. They have the same purpose. Both types aim to break security to obtain information, money, control, or any advantage over the victim. They are often combined. A real attacker may start with a passive attack to gather information quietly and then perform an active attack. Example, sniff the network, then steal a password, that's a passive attack, and use that password to log in and change data, that's an active attack. Finally, both need protection. A complete cybersecurity strategy must detect, prevent, and respond to both types of threats. Protecting only against active attacks or only against spying is not enough.
Now I'm going to explain how to protect ourselves from both passive and active attacks, and then I will end with an analogy and a conclusion. How to protect against passive attacks. Since passive attacks target confidentially. Our main goal is to make the information unreadable for anyone who might intercept it. Some important protection measures are encryption, use HTTPS when browsing websites, VPNs when using public networks, and messaging apps with end-to-end encryption. This way, even if someone captures the traffic, all they see is encrypted data that looks like random symbols. The next is secure Wi-Fi. Avoid open or unprotected public Wi-Fi whenever possible, at home or at work. Use a strong Wi-Fi password and modern security standards like WPA2 or WPA3. Strong authentication. Use two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. This means that even if an attacker sees or guesses your password, they still need a second code, usually from phone or an app. Okay, for active attacks, our main focus is to protect integrity and availability and to detect when something suspicious is happening. Some keys defenses are authentication and authorization. Use a strong password, two-factor authentication, and clear permission rules. Make sure that only authorized users have the access to a sensitive systems and data. Integrity checks. Use digital signatures, hash, and checksums to verify the data has not been modified. For example, software downloads often include a hash value so users can check if the file is exactly the same as the original. To conclude, passive and active attacks are two fundamental categories of cyber attacks that we all should understand. The passive attacks try to secretly observe and steal information, mainly affecting confidentially. Active attacks try to change, damage, or interrupt systems affecting integrity and availability. Both are both are dangerous, but in different ways. Passive attacks are hard to detect because they are silent and invisible. Active attacks are more visible but can cause immediate and serious damage. To protect ourselves ourselves, we need a combination of technical measures and good habits. Encryption, security networks, and privacy practice help defend against passive attacks. Firewalls, intrusion detection, strong authentication, software updates, and user education help defend against active attacks. If we understand these two types of attacks, we can design better systems, choose better tools, and make safer decisions every day when we use technology.